3 and we're on our second project for the online pottery club course, and this week we're going to make a fish. Okay, so this fish is made using the same method that you made your emojis. I thought it would be a good idea to continue using that technique, as you made such fantastic emojis and you're quite skilled at that now. So this fish is hollow, its mouth is the hole to let the air out. Okay, so that means it's not going to explode in the kiln. So this is basically 2 thumb pots put together. Thumb pot 1 like that, and thumb pot 2 underneath. Okay, and then we've got fins here, here, and little ones each side. We've got some eyes, and on this one we've got some mark making. So to do this, I just use the end of a tool to press into the clay. Okay, so I've got, I'm going to move the camera now so you can see my making area. So I'll put the fish here so you can see him, and I've got the clay just like you, wrapped up. And what I want you to do is to divide this clay into 3 sections. You need a section for thumb pot 1, thumb pot 2, and some clay for the fins. Okay, so I've just got some plastic tools from my kitchen drawer. I've got a little bit of water and I've got a sponge. I'm going to use the plastic tool just to cut the clay. So I'm going to take the smallest third off, and that's going to be for my decoration. And then I'm going to divide this into half. Okay, now I don't know how wet your clay is, so you might want to move it around in your hands, and remember you want to get rid of all those air bubbles. Okay, so roll it around. And when you think you've got a ball, put it to one side. That's quite dry, so I don't want it to dry out anymore, so I'm not going to handle it anymore than just doing this. Okay, and that's my second ball. So then my 2 balls for my 2 thumb pots. So just remind you of the thumb pot technique. Press in and squeeze the sides. Press in and squeeze the sides, and then you can go round like this. Can you remember the sides of your thumb pot must be roughly about 1 centimetre, and you need to work out how thick the clay is at the bottom. You won't be able to see, so I just sort of pinch it with my finger and thumb, and I reckon that's about that thick, so I need to squeeze that out a bit more. And keep going round. I'm not going to do any coiling on this because the 2 thumb pots will be enough to create the size I want. And to get a rounded base, just put one hand in to support the structure of the thumb pot and tap it with your palm of the other. Okay. Right, so that's thumb pot 1. Put that to one side, and I've got to do the same with the other thumb pot. Squeeze it. Can you remember I said you want to make sure there are no air bubbles in your clay? So if you see anything that looks like a bubble, then on the surface just put a little cross in it with one of your tools and get rid of it, and then smooth it out. Those air bubbles might make your pottery crack really badly in the kiln, or worse, it could explode. Air expands when it's heated, and it will force its way out of your pottery, unfortunately, and damage your pottery. So I'm checking the thickness again. I don't want to go too thin either. I'm a bit thin here, so I'm just going to squeeze the clay together on the inside. Right, so I've got 2 thumb pots now, and this one's a little uneven, so that's not going to join very well. I'm going to have this big gap here, so I'm just going to change the shape of that by squeezing the clay together, and then I can tap that to get an even edge, and I can tap the other one too, try and get an even edge. Right, so we've got to join it together now. We've got to remember our joining techniques. Okay, so you need to make crisscrosses on the 2 surfaces you want to join. They can be pretty rough, because they're not any form of decoration. So roughen up the surface like that, and do the same to the other one. So roughen up the surface like that, and you need some water to make it go a bit gooey, and that will help the 2 surfaces join. Some water on here, and join these 2 together. So the idea for the moment is that you're actually going to trap all the air inside the clay to make a solid structure to build all your decoration onto, and you're only going to put the air hole in at the very end. If you put the air hole in now, it may collapse while you're working. So keep smoothing it round and make sure all those joins are secure. And then in your hand, you're going to tap it exactly like your emoji project, and then smooth down all the lumps and bumps. Spend some time doing this. If your clay is rather wet, you find that your clay isn't as dry as mine, you might want to leave it and come back. Leave it for about half an hour and then come back to it, but don't ignore it completely, because you want to check that it's not drying out too much. So spend a bit of time doing this. I'm going to rush it a bit, because this is the sort of thing you can spend ages on. I am going to go over it with a tiny bit of water. Minimise the water you use. I'm really squeezing that sponge out to get rid of the excess water. You don't want a big sloppy mess literally on your hands. I'm doing this just to help create a smooth surface. There's no water dripping off the sponge or my pottery at all, and because it's a warm day, it is drying fairly quickly. You've got to be careful how hard you press. The air inside the shape is supporting it. Okay, that will do for the moment. Now, my fish shape, he's fatter at the front and he's narrower towards the tail. Okay, you could get a picture of the fish and make a realistic one, but this one's from my imagination. I'm not a fish expert, so I've no idea if it looks like a real fish. get rid of some more lumps and bumps. So I'm going to tap it at the back and make it go to a point at the back, making sure I'm not making it cave in on itself. And then I'm going to go over with my sponge again, a tiny bit more water, get rid of the excess water. Circular movements like this help create a really smooth surface. If you've got any imperfections like this, you can perhaps use one of your tools as well to get rid of it, and then go over with your sponge again. Right, so I could spend a lot longer on that, but I want to get on and show you how to add the decoration. Right, I think the first things I'm going to do is add the fins on either side. So I've got to work out how much clay I need. So I think that will be enough. And I'm literally going to press down onto my tea towel. If you've got a rolling pin in your kitchen drawer, you could use that, but pressing down is going to do the job. So I've pressed it down, and it's about just over ½ centimetre thick. Okay, so I've got to work out sort of shape I want, and I want two shapes the same. So I'm going to place them on top of each other, and then I don't want them to join on top of each other, just using that first one as a template for the second one, and that will be my fins. Okay, so I think they're going to go somewhere like this. So remember joining techniques. Cross hatch the surface that you want to join. Cross hatch this surface here, and I'm going to join it there. Before I do that, I am going to spend a little bit of time adding some surface decoration and mark making to this fin. I've got some marks in here, and I'm going to use my knife to put those in. Quite simple. So I've just put them in like that, and then a little bit of water on this side, make it gooey, make this gooey, and the fin is going to go on there. Okay, I'm going to smooth that in and join it together. I've got to be careful how hard I'm pressing, because I don't want it to ruin the shape of my fish that I've made, the shape. And then I'm going to do the same to the other side. So work out which way it's going. So I'm going to do cross hatching on the surface, cross hatching on the surface I want to join. Going to spend a bit of time putting the texture. Another way you could do it is just by running a fork over the lines, for the lines, make some marks like that, and then I'm going to join it in exactly the same way. I'll turn it round so you can see what I'm doing, and then join that on. Use my sponge and I want to make sure it's thoroughly joined, so I'm going to use my knife, and I'm just going to make sure it's joined inside as well. Do the same on this one. And then I'm going to do a little bit of sort of shaping, make sure those marks are still where I want them to be. Imagine that they're flowing through the water. Now, one thing you want to avoid is thin bits of clay that are sticking out. As your clay dries out, it becomes very fragile, and those bits could get knocked off, so don't go too thin. Right, the next bit I'm going to make, I think, will be this section on the top. So I'm going to take off some clay again, and I'm going to press it down, exactly the same method as before. I want it long and thin, so cut that there, just overlap it by a good centimetre and squish that together, press it down, and I want this to be the same shape roughly. So draw in to the clay and get the shape that you want. Okay, that will do, and that's got to go on the top. And it's a bit rough and ready, so I need it to look good on both sides. So I'm going to smooth out the clay with my damp sponge. It's not soaking wet, and do the same on the other side. And I'm going to put my marks on. Using the sharper side of my knife this time, but my knife is plastic, so it's not very sharp at all, but it makes some nice marks. And the same on the other side. Now you've got to be careful here, you don't press all the way through and end up cutting your clay in half. I'm also going to put some marks on the very top. So I've got to work out where this is going, and it's going here, so I've got to put marks on the top of my fish, the same underneath, and some water here, and I've got to fit this on the top. Now I've then got to join the clay really securely to the fish so it doesn't fall off. When it's wet, it will stick really well. Bring this a bit closer to the camera for you. But when it's dry, it will just come away if it's not been joined. Go with my sponge. Now you might find that you've lost some of your decoration, so you can go over that again. Very gently, making sure that you've got all the marks that you want. So the next bit I want is the tail fin. Now I'm going to leave that bit of clay for the eyes. Squeeze that together. I'm going to press it together quite hard because these are several bits of clay I've joined together that were scraps more or less, and I want to make sure there's no air. So I'm using this technique here to try and press all the clay out, and then I'm going to press it into the shapes I want. So I've got to draw a tail fin now, so I'm going for a big V shape. Okay, now that's too pointed at this end, so I'm going to cut that down, and then I'm going to make sure it's going to sit on the table properly, and not be awkward, and then I'm going to cut another V in here to give it a bit more interest. As you can see, I'm not a fish expert at all, so it's not real. I think that will do, especially if I curve it round. So you plan your own design. Now it's a bit rough and ready, so I'm going to smooth that all down. Got some lines on here I don't want, so I'm going to get rid of those. Do the same on the other side. You can spend more time on yours. Remember to put those marks in before you join it, and have them flaring out. Got to be careful I don't go all the way through, because it will just snap the clay in half, especially when it's dry. And you want to put some marks on the end, and then you've got to use the same joining techniques. So I'm going to roughen up this area here where I'm going to join it. I'm going to roughen up here, get some water on here and on the tail, and I'm going to join them together. If your clay is wet, you could join it and then leave it if you feel it's flopping around, and then come back to it. And you could support it with a sponge or some rolled up material. So I might have to alter the size of this fin here. It's slightly in the way, so I'm going to make this slightly smaller. And I've curved my tail fin as well to give him the impression, as he's swimming. I'm going to curve those as well to give the impression that he's swimming through the water and there's movement. Okay, so I'm not going to do any more to that, because if I fiddle around with it too much at this stage, because it's fairly wet, it might collapse. So I'm going to leave that and come back to it after I've finished the video. Now, to give him a bit of life, I'm going to put some eyes on him. So you might want it to look cartoony and have big eyes, or have them smaller, but the best thing to do is to roll a ball of clay and then cut it in half, and squeeze it back into a circle. Then you've got two eyes that's the same size, and they are going to go at the side like that. Okay, so we're going to use the same joining technique. push that on. Before I do any more to that, I'm going to join this one. Like this surface too. Not sure if they're in the right place for fish, and they're more at the side of the fish's head rather than like a human. And then I've got to go around with a tool and make sure they are really securely joined onto the body of the fish. And the next thing you want to do is to find a pointy tool and press it in and give it a twirl round. And give them some little eyeballs. Right, before you put that hole in the fish, you need to create some scales. Okay. And the easiest way I think you can do this is by getting the end of a knife or something this shape and press it in, and you create some scale-like marks. Take any excess clay off as you work, so you don't get any unnecessary marks. And the same on the other side. I start at the back and go forward. I find this easier because sometimes marks overlap. I'm going to turn him round and do him this way because otherwise I'm working and I can't really see what I'm doing. You can keep going as far as you want to. Okay, so that's your fish. You mustn't forget this really important stage. First of all, name your work. Okay, so as I'm Julie Massey, I get a J and an M going on the base, and then the final thing you need to do is to get a pokey tool and put your air hole in. Now I've put it in as the mouth. It doubles up as a feature, and you've got to make sure it's gone all the way through and that air can come out. I do check that you've done this, and if you forget and your clay is soft enough, I will put that air hole in for you. So that is the fish. Try to create a feeling of movement by bending the clay. I've got lots of texture on there, and I've used the thumb pop method. So good luck making your fish, and I'll collect them from your school on Friday. So bring them back by 9 AM and I'll pick them up, I'll dry them out, put them in the kiln, fire them, and then you'll get glaze from me. Now the emojis were quite specific colours, so if you would like particular colours, can you let me know 6 colours? You can get your mums to send me a message on Facebook and just say your initials and 6 colours. I've painted this guy orange, yellow and purple. If you don't let me know what your colours are, I'll probably put in 3 primary colours, red, yellow and blue, and white and black, and then you'll get your glaze as well. You can mix those colours together like you do with your paints, but the colours change a little bit in the kiln, so they might not look exactly the same as when you put them on. So if you do want to let me know some colours, just message me. I'll see you next week for glazing. Good luck, guys, and here are my fish to finish off the video. So bye bye.